our attendees muted, but we ask you to utilize the chat box for your question. We'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation. If you have a question or a comment, please use that chat box so that we can see that, and make sure that you address it to all panelists and attendees when you use the chat box to ensure that we see that. And as just a reminder, this is a non-marketing area, so please refrain from marketing for those in the private sector. We want to keep this more focused on the issues at hand and the work that we do collectively as an industry. So with that, I think we'll jump into the first slide. So just as a reminder to everyone, CASH is continuing our educational opportunities for our membership. We will be hosting another technical training. It's scheduled for Wednesday, the 19th, 20th, and 21st. It will be held in two different locations. The 19th will be virtual. The 20th will be held up in the Clovis Unified School District for those folks that are coming from the Central Valley or in the north. And the second repeat will be hosted Friday the 21st in Long Beach Unified School District in the south for those folks in Southern California, so that you can be a part of this technical training. So if you haven't signed up for that, opportunities are still available. Please look for that on the CASH website. This training will be focusing on a lot of the capital funding sources, budgeting, procurement and construction options. We'll be looking closely at things like some of the inevitable audits that will be coming with some of the federal dollars that'll be out there. We'll have folks talking about ESSER and some of the pending deadlines that are coming for some of those dollars. So if you're interested in those topics, please sign up for the technical training workshop that's out there. It's available on our CASH website and available for your use. So with that, we have a great group of individuals that will be with us today to talk about their respective areas of expertise. We have, first up, we have Ida Clare, our state architect, that's with us today to talk about how the work that's happening in DSA. So Ida, welcome to the screen. I appreciate you coming in today and talking to us about all the great work and the partnership that DSA is doing with us in our industry. So with that, I'll hand it off and you can take it away.
Thank you, Alan. I will share my screen. Okay. See, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There we go. All right, it's working now. We continue to be busy at DSA. We're still processing our voluminous workload that we received in November and December, but are near closing that out. And so as a result, January, February, and March have been light, which is good. It gives us a chance to gear up for those summer projects. Our current month, March, scheduled submittals totals to $326 million in construction. And of course, our busiest office in a number of projects is Sacramento with 35% of that total. And San Diego is the office that's anticipating the largest projects with 35% of the project cost total that's being submitted in March. Pending April submittals, you can see those summer projects are starting to come in. We are presently $583 million and still populating the field for the last week. So April will be a busy month for us. A little bit about our public school construction collaborative. We are seeking members for some vacancies. If any of you are an electrical engineer, general contractor, or probably not today, a community college facility representative. However, if you are, we are accepting new members to fill those vacancies, and you can find out more information on the PSCC webpage at DSA's website. We do have some current open positions. While we continue to be busy, we do need to staff up. And I know that for many of you, you're challenged in finding staff, as are we. So these are the positions that are open. We do have technical positions for structural engineers and senior architects. The positions for the senior architects, even though they are headquarters positions, they can work at it from any DSA regional office. So it's opened up throughout the state. A little bit about post-secondary education student housing. We continue to see many of these projects come in, taking advantage of SB 169 funds. So I do encourage you to meet with the regional offices in advance when you have those funds, so you can ensure that accessibility is addressed appropriately. You wouldn't want to have to change your designs later on in the fact. So for coming to DSA, dorm on campus or on district-owned property comes to DSA, and a dorm off campus leased by the district with the purchase option comes to DSA for full submittal. Access compliance is for dorms off campus leased and with district straight funds used for construction. And of course, again, projects are public housing and housing at a place of education. Encourage the use of exercising those pre-application meetings and getting your questions answered. Assistance after an emergency. We've been deploying safety assessment professionals ever since the Humboldt quake. So the storms and these atmospheric rivers have been quite a challenge for us. And I'm sure even more so the jurisdictions that are actually affected by these disasters. So the storms, we have just deployed safety assessment professionals to evaluate schools in Mono County, Inyo County, El Dorado County, Monterey, Merced. Yeah, and then of course for the earthquakes in Humboldt. So we've been busy. Just a little bit to cover the process. If there's no declared emergency, just contact your local DSA regional manager and ask for assistance if you need us to review your facilities to ensure that they're safe for students to occupy. If the governor declares an emergency, you're going to need to make that request to the local enforcement entity, who's in charge of managing the emergency. They will contact Cal OES to let them know that a safety assessment professional from DSA is requested. And then, of course, we await emission tasks and then deploy. Any subsequent related events may require additional mission tasks. I will say that you're always welcome to reach out to us first, and we can also guide you through the process of requesting a mission task if it's in fact a declared emergency, or you can go directly to the locals who will then ensure that we are contacted. So obviously we're still in the middle of our wet season, so we still may have requests for SAPs regarding these winter storms and these atmospheric rivers coming to us. We have issued IRN4, which is requirements for modular battery energy storage systems. I encourage you to read this IR and understand it and ask questions as you design your facilities if battery storage is part of the project. As you know, the energy code now does require photovoltaics and battery storage for buildings of a specific size. And so these are specific requirements in the fire code because these batteries can ignite. And so while rare, they can ignite. So there are requirements in the fire code for housing these batteries. Excuse me. Our Access Code Collaborative is seeking 6 new members, 2 individuals with disabilities, 1 disability advocate, 1 building facility owner representative. We welcome schools to be that representative, 1 code enforcement representative, 1 access specialist, and 1 building construction industry representative. So if you fall into one of those categories and are interested in joining the ACC, please apply via this link. Oops. All right, a little bit about what's going on in the intervening code cycle. So last week we had our code advisory committee meeting regarding all gender multi-user restroom facilities. The proposal advances now to 45-day. The 45-day comment period will begin April 21st and will last till June 5th. And that is the opportunity for all of you to look at the regulations and comment on either in support or if there's a change that's needed, or in opposition if that is your position. I will say that it provides an exception to current requirements to provide separate facilities. So this is not a requirement for all gender multi-user restrooms. It's correcting the plumbing code to allow them to take place on a school campus or anywhere in the state if an owner chooses to provide it. And it allows for the replacement of a urinal with a toilet, and then requires all toilet fixtures to be in privacy compartments, and urinals must either be in a privacy compartment or a separate space. and it requires signs on all compartment doors that are detectable by individuals with vision impairments. So again, that 45-day comment period is April 21 to June 5th. If you want to know more about the 45-day comment period when it starts, please make sure that you register to receive DSA emails. Access was heard last month in February. It is in the middle of the 45-day comment period right now. One of our big objectives is obviously adding the technical requirements for accessibility at urinal compartments, because urinal compartments presently don't exist with separate sex facilities. And so we have introduced those for all genders. So this is a little bit of a parallel rulemaking. There are a couple other items that we are addressing, clarifying some public housing requirements to match Fair Housing Act, but those are not as comprehensive as what we're addressing for urinal compartments. Again, we are in the middle of 45-day comment period right now. We are having an open public hearing tomorrow. If you want information on that, you can find that information on our website. If you can't find it, just send me an email and I'll direct you to it. But we are having a public meeting on these requirements tomorrow. Cal Green, we've updated electric vehicle charging stations. It will be in a separate section now from the non-residential standards. These standards will be school specific. While our existing proposals remain, we are providing an option for a power alternative that allows you to, with a power budget, to design your charging stations at the level that you feel is appropriate for your campus. We are also reducing a carbon reduction measure as a mandatory measure for buildings 50,000 square feet or larger. That offers 3 paths to compliance: either a building reuse option, a prescriptive option, or a performance option with a whole building life cycle analysis. For projects of this size, your architects do know how to address these issues, and this is an introductory measure to address embodied carbon in our facilities, kind of taking a very measured approach. These are not standards that are difficult to achieve by any measure right now. It only applies to 5 products: rebar, steel, concrete, flat glass, and mineral wool insulation. And it begins the process for us to start addressing embodied carbon in our buildings, and also to have material manufacturers to really use funds that are available in the Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level to create environmental product declarations and more products that address embodied carbon. And then, of course, there's requirements for CO2 monitors in classrooms, and those will apply for alterations. Right now, they're already required for new construction. We are requiring them if your alteration or the building you're altering has a classroom in it, a CO2 monitor will be required to be installed. The 45-day comment period for Cal Green initiatives begins March 31st through May 15th. And again, sign up on our website if you want to comment on the Cal Green provisions. Structural safety, 45-day comment period begins April 7th to May 22nd. And there are not significant items in the structural safety section, but they are addressing technical requirements for clarity, consistency in the existing building code, and just updating the requirements from Senate Bill AB 306 that removes personal residence by teacher or employee of a district from compliance with Field Act requirements. Our Sustainable School Showcase progresses. Our current features Crafton Hills Community College. Part 2 of this story will be appearing hopefully next week. We try to feature a sustainable school quarterly, and this quarter we will have a Part A and a Part B story. And then, of course, stay informed. As I stated, subscribe. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Subscribe to our listserv. And it's on the front page of our DSA website, and you can hit subscribe at the bottom and subscribe to our emails. And so you can find out about the public hearing tomorrow. Actually, you will probably have to email me for that because we're not sending another notice out. But all the other public comment periods, you will be informed if you subscribe. And with that, I am done. Any questions? Okay.
I apologize, talking to myself again.
There is one question,
There is.
Alan, if I may interrupt you, from Scott Jaffe, inquiring where can I find the most up-to-date requirements for CO2 monitor installation? I will provide the link in this when we're done talking before I leave. I'll provide the link to where they can find those regulations on our website.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Just any other quick questions for Ida? I know one that I have is really wanted to take a moment and thank you for the partnership and support as our state has battled for with the emergencies that have come up between earthquakes and, I mean, you know, I knock on wood, we don't need the fires again, but we've had floods and now we've had earthquakes. And so, and really appreciate the support that DSA is showing to our schools as you've been out in the field and helping to address some of those concerns that are happening up and down the state. So I want to thank you for that. And the other quick kind of question I had was, a lot of districts are balancing this concept of the green code and carbon reduction versus some of the structural requirements, and specifically EB4, and how those two issues somewhat can be opposed to each other, and how is maybe Cash really helping to balance those two different initiatives?
So they are not opposed. I mean, we want to encourage the reuse of existing buildings whenever possible, but safety is primary in this endeavor. And so obviously our EB4 objectives are trying to create a method to address construction cost escalation that is not really established by a sharp line that basically says you're over the threshold and now it's no longer viable to keep your building. We really want to look at addressing it from an alternate method where perhaps depending on the amount that's actually spent, there's increasing safety that's applied as opposed to an all or nothing objective. We are still exploring that with EB4, and now that our structural safety, and now that we're heading into 4 and 5 day comment periods, this is areas where our rulemaking load is not very intensive. And so those existing buildings task force will resume. We're hoping April is what we're targeting. And so back to the carbon reduction, it does provide 3 different pathways. So if if there is a decision to retain the building, then that is one way to meet the carbon reduction proposal. But if there is a decision that for whatever reason, compromise safety or other purposes, the building does need to go, then there are the other 2 ways to address the carbon reduction proposal in new construction once you proceed with a new construction project. So they're not necessarily in conflict. They're just taking into consideration and weighing options as to meeting the regulatory requirements. But there are pathways, obviously, to do that. There won't be a position where you're going to say, well, I can't do either one, because that's not the way the options were created. Again, we're still trying to resolve the existing buildings issue and addressing the EB4. And so this will continue, but they're not in conflict. They're much more just providing more options to consider when you're making your decisions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. We did have one question come in from John. Can you repeat that reference for the teacher employee housing exclusions? So they'd like to reference that and read up on it.
Sure. So that was as a result of AB 306, which was 2021, that said that teacher and employee housing provided on a campus is now no longer subject to the Field Act. And so what we're doing in our regulatory development is removing that requirement that exists in code language that says it is, so that the conflict doesn't exist. But if you want to read the bill specifically in the laws, you can go on the legislative website, the legislature website for the bill in 2021, and look up AB 3096. Can someone help me? Now I'm losing it. I can put a link in the chat just so that you guys can find it. That's probably the easiest way. And so it's better to read the bill, because all we're doing is removing the requirement from the Field Act. The bill says all the history behind that bill when it was passed.
Great, great. Thank you. I really appreciate your support and being here today to talk to us. I really appreciate what you're doing in DSA. So we'll go ahead and move on here to call up. I don't see anyone from OPSC. So I'll bring up our folks from Cash, Nancy Charez Espinosa and Rebecca Colleen, to talk a little bit about legislative regulatory maintenance network updates. So with that, looks like I'm turning it over to Nancy first.
Absolutely. Good morning. Is it still morning? Yes. Good morning, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to share with you just a couple of updates. First, the school facilities bond, obviously is a major priority for us. Hot off the presses, SB 28 by Mr. Glazer, the K through University bond has just been approved by the Senate Committee on Education with very little discussion. This is as expected. We see a lot of courtesy votes in the House of Origin. More scrutiny, if any, will generally take place in the second house. And with this bond bill and AB 247, we do expect that they will move into the second house and maybe be parked there for a little bit until actual negotiations and discussion ensues. So SB 28, just a quick recap, it still includes all of the provisions that the voters rejected in Prop 13. But we will again expect it to advance to the second house in anticipation of negotiations between both houses. AB 247 by Mr. Muratsuchi, the K through community college bond that Cash does support is scheduled for hearing on April 12th. The stakeholder process has begun. If you recall, there are actually 3 authors for this bill, so the staff of all 3 are coordinating this process. There was a meeting last week. There's going to be another one this week. So far, we're trying to, bring all the stakeholders up to speed because there's a lot of folks who are new to the conversation. And shortly, we're going to start diving into discussion about what provisions from past bills like AB 48 or AB 75 should be put into this new vehicle, AB 247, and also asking, are there some new current needs that should be addressed in a bond bill? So that's the discussion that's coming up ahead of us for the stakeholder process. I mentioned the bill is set for hearing in the Assembly Committee on Education on April 12th. That means that we really need you to submit your letters of support for that bill by April 4th, by close of business on April 4th. We sent out some guidance to Cash members, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember, but check your emails and we include some links there on how to register for the legislative portal, which is how we submit letters now, and all of the instructions that you need are there. Of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions. And that is all I have for Cash. I'm happy to hand it over to my colleague, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to give a quick update on budget because there's a lot of activity in that space for school facilities, right? So this year, the governor is proposing a cut and a delay for our 2 school facility allocations in the budget. Let's start with the school facility program. So we were expecting $2.1 billion general fund in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. The governor is proposing to reduce that by a relatively nominal amount, $100 million. And that is something that Cash does oppose, but we understand that there's a difficult revenue picture that's forming here in the state, and we're being warned that the legislature and governor are going to need to make some difficult decisions when it comes to passing that final budget in June. So we're waiting to see what happens with that one. We do see that as positive signaling that the governor did not propose a greater reduction to that program, that he does understand that there is a need for school facility program funding. And we have not yet really seen sort of the detailed conversation happening in the legislature to see how they're receiving that proposal. The second piece that I want to mention is our funding for the preschool, transitional kindergarten, full day kindergarten facilities grant program. So we were expecting the next tranche of funding at $550 million in 23-24, again from the general fund. which we're very grateful to receive. That program has been oversubscribed, has been very popular to help meet the needs, especially for bringing your TK classrooms on site so that you can house the new grade level. And that one is not a cut, it's a delay. So the governor is proposing to delay the $550 million from the 23-24 fiscal year out 1 year to 24-25. This one is a little bit of a mixed conversation in the legislature. So first, we had the Legislative Analyst Office issue a report that really questioned the need for additional facilities funding for transitional kindergarten facilities. They were saying that the delay seems reasonable given where we are with the state budget picture, and that workforce challenges appear to be more prevalent or a bigger barrier to implementing universal TK. They're basing this assessment in part on reporting that was done by school districts as part of the planning that is being done to support universal TK. So school districts had to submit a report to the Department of Education regarding what they were planning to do. And 75% of school districts that responded in that report said that they have adequate space to meet their projected enrollment for TK. Now, we are all very familiar at this point with the concept of just because you have an open available classroom does not mean that it is a classroom that is Title V compliant and meets the needs of our youngest learners, which are very specialized, right? You need that larger classroom space, you need that restroom within the classroom or adjacent to the kinder complex. You've got you need developmentally appropriate furniture and equipment. You need to have the playground space immediately adjacent to your kinder classroom, etc. So we are now up against a narrative that is developing in the legislature, which says schools are going to make it work. They're going to find the space for our TK kiddos, and we don't actually need to provide additional funding to them to help support those unique facilities needs. We just had the first conversation in detail in budget subcommittee this week. The conversation was on the assembly side, so we still have to have that conversation on the Senate side, and there's plenty of time for us to help inform the process and educate our legislators about how important this program is. If we're looking at submissions to the program to help us understand the need, OPSC did just have an application round that closed in early March. There's $360 million available that was previously approved in prior budgets for this round. And there were $1.5 billion worth of applications that were submitted just for that $360 million. So it's a very popular program, and we do know that those needs are great. We have to keep in mind that there's history in this space, that when we went into the Great Recession, we had $300 million that had been provided in 2019 just for full day kinder facilities, and that funding was swept to be used for general budget resiliency purposes. And so some of the legislators that have been a part of this conversation now for a few years are remembering back, hey, we swept that money, but they're not remembering why it happened. It wasn't lack of demand. It was because we were anticipating a large budget deficit as we went into the recession, the COVID recession, not the Great Recession, the COVID recession. So that's where we're at on that. And we're looking forward to continuing that conversation. And Cash is opposed to that delay and wants the $550 million commitment maintained in fiscal year 23-24. So with that, I'll stop. I know there is a lot of activity in the chat popping up, so I'll see if there is anything there. Lots on, nope, I don't think so. Okay, so I'm going to pass it, Alan. We actually have Ian if we want to pass it to Ian to talk about the bills and legislation.
Absolutely. So we'll call Ian up. He can tell us a little bit about the activity he's involved with.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I just got back into my office. I was attending the Senate Education Committee hearing, and you heard Nancy say that SB 28 was heard there, and very little discussion really on that, really just kind of moving it along as part of the process. So there was that. But I was actually there to provide opposition testimony on a bill. And so I'll tell you just a little bit about that. But before I did that, I wanted to tell you about a popular public policy idea that's happening in Sacramento, policy focus. And there's a lot of focus on and concern about heat and schools, both exterior, outside, shade structures, those types of things, as well as interior. Thermal comfort, that's the technical term. And so there's discussions about establishing a required range for interior temperatures on the interior part. But we were actually testifying on a bill against a bill today, SB 499 by Senator Menjivar. And that one had to do, well, it's a very expansive and prescriptive bill, but basically would have required installation of a lot of trees, particular kinds of trees. I would just say the bill was all over the place. And what we did was we objected to it because of its possible cost impact, as well as there's a lot of overlay with things that are already being done. They're talking a lot about. I brought up the fact that even the California Green Code has a lot of the issues already required there. So the bill did pass out of committee as expected, but the issues that we brought up, and it was not only CASH, there was other school organizations, including CSBA and Riverside County Schools that opposed the bill. So it will next go to its next committee, but we will probably continue to oppose it, as well as continue to have discussion on all these other what we call heat bills, right? So there's that, and keep your eye out for those, because those are there's a lot of them. The other one, and I'll end on this one, is there's a AB 249, again with water testing, and with the concern for lead. Very quickly, what the bill basically does, it follows the AB 746 approach, right? With the partnership with community water systems doing the actual testing, but it's a significant escalation from a school perspective. Under 746, you would sample a few potable water outlets, and it would be triggered, excuse me, at 15 parts per billion, which is the longstanding federal requirement. This bill proposes to trigger at 5 parts per billion, and maybe even more significantly, or as significantly, it would require testing of all potable water systems at a school. So significantly more activity and expense and planning and all the things that everyone on this website or on this webinar knows about. So we, CASH, and other school organizations are working, but right now we are very likely to oppose the bill. It did pass the environmental committee relatively easily, but now it will be scheduled in the education committee, Assembly Education Committee. And so very likely we'll be doing a joint letters expressing concerns on behalf of schools. So those are kind of a couple of the issues that are going through the legislature now related to this larger issue of the state's climate goals, and how they're kind of the specifics are coming through the agencies, but in this case, there's legislation aimed at these issues. So that's all I have today, but of course, we'll have more information on these bills and these issues as we go forward. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ian, Nancy, and Rebecca. Great work working with our policymakers up here in Sacramento. And I'll just as a comment to that, that work is now especially hard when you consider how many new policymakers are up here in Sacramento. A full third of our policymakers are new, and those folks just in many respects don't understand the school world that we all work in. So thank you, and really appreciate all the hard work from Rebecca, Nancy, and Ian are doing in this area. So I don't see any questions that pop up. So we'll move on now to our School Energy Coalition, and I think we'll call Nancy back. Do you have anything on this for us, Nancy?
I do, Alan. SEC has also been busy. One thing we've been doing is working with our coalition partners. We joined 164 organizations and calling for the PUC to delay the implementation of NEM 3.0 until they resolve the issues in an administrative appeal for rehearing that was filed by 3 entities. It was the Center for Biological Diversity, Protect Our Communities Foundation, and the Environmental Working Group. The appeal lays out how the PUC's purported cost shift argument was used to justify slashing credits that would evaporate if the PUC actually considered the true economic value and the local benefits of rooftop solar. As you all may recall, the PUC's NEM 3 decision slashed by 75 to 80% the credit that new solar adoptees receive for sharing their extra solar energy with their neighbors on the grid. And it makes solar less affordable for schools, among other users. Excuse me. We are also hearing, related to that utilities are slow walking interconnection agreements in advance of that mid-April implementation date for NEM 3.0. There is an attempt to pressure utilities on this issue to just let them know that they're being watched. And that's in the form of a bill by Assemblymember Berman, AB 643, which creates some deadlines and some fines and some communication mechanisms for both the PUC and the utilities to really shine a light on this issue of them slow walking to try to force more folks to get into NEM 3.0. And lastly, for SEC, I'll mention that we are still engaged in the NEMA, the aggregated NEM proceeding. The ALJ at the last workshop mentioned that she was going to publish her proposed ruling with questions later this spring and anticipates a PUC ruling early in the summer. So we are watching and waiting to see when they put that out. And I'm not sure if my colleague Ian had something to add on SEC. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but just want to offer that opportunity.
Nope, I'm good, Nancy. Thanks, though.
Awesome. Okay, I'll hand it back to you, Alan.
Great. Well, thank you, Nancy. I think for those of us that are working in the solar area, it's refreshing to know that someone's watching these utilities to make sure that they are following the rules. There's a lot of us out here that are pushing hard to get our applications in under that impending deadline. So I'm actually happy to hear that someone's watching the utilities to make sure that they follow the rules. So that's good. So let's see. It looks like did a question jump in here? No, it doesn't look like. So with that, we will continue to move forward and call Mr. Walrath up to talk to us a little bit about our federal arm and the work of the Californians for School Facilities. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Wanted to give some background on Californians for School Facilities. As Alan said, CASH created CSF over 20 years ago for the purposes of lobbying at the federal level for federal support of school facilities in California and essentially nationwide. We have been working for the last approximately 25 years for federal support, with success on direct grants that have been provided, as well as access to lower interest rates for bond cost. We are continuing those efforts because schools are the second largest infrastructure program after streets, highways, surface transportation. And we believe there should be a federal support at the same level as the federal government supports roads, streets, surface transportation. Schools and local transportation being the same conceptually as public goods. With that, we had our first trip back this year for lobbying on these issues. The specific issues we were talking about were on the elementary and secondary education emergency relief funding to extend deadlines and provide greater flexibility and more clarification for school districts in using those funds. We also talked about the reintroduction of Rebuild America Schools Act that contains approximately $30 billion over the next 10 years for the tax credit bonds for school facilities, as well as $100 billion in direct grants to school districts for school facilities. This is a major issue. We hope to keep pushing it through this session of Congress and have it incorporated in the final negotiations on the appropriations bills for the next fiscal year. Lastly, we were confirming that school districts would be eligible for the tax credits that were created in both the Jobs Act as well as the Inflation Reduction Act that were both passed in 2022. This would be direct funding to school districts to meet some of the costs of borrowing for putting solar and solar storage on their facilities, as well as some of the issues regarding electric school buses and charging stations. A very large agenda. It was a very successful trip. We will be continuing to do our lobbying with our Washington, D.C. lobbyist, Bob Canavan, and we'll keep you informed once we have the information from Treasury on how school districts can apply for some of the direct funding for the Inflation Reduction Act. We intend to have webinars available to all cash school districts and county offices on how they can apply and participate. We're not sure when that will be, but we will keep you informed. With that, more than pleased to answer any questions.
Great.
I'm not
thank you.
seeing any, but
Yeah, I'm not seeing any. Just thank you for that. I think that this is important work as we begin to work our way through the federal program to look at how those dollars, those Rebuild America dollars, will benefit our schools and be able to bring some of the needy reforms and projects at school sites. So definitely thank you for the work you're doing, and the coalition that actually makes that trip to Washington on a regular basis to talk with our federal policymakers to ensure that schools are always at the top of their thoughts. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in, so I am gonna move it forward, and we'll turn it over to our new vice chair, Tom Pace, to talk to us a little bit about the annual conference, the one that was just recently completed last month, and the next one that's on the horizon.
Alan, it looks like my camera isn't working, so you're just going to have to hear me as we share out. Wanted to take a quick second to say that, I think one of the leading challenges that face schools today is the building of 21st century school systems that promote creative, collaborative approaches to learning. And I think the 44th conference gave us a lot of tools in advancing that idea. And a couple things about the 44th conference that stuck out to me was that it was one of our largest attended conferences, actually the largest attended conference ever. And that 20% of the conference was made up of first-time attendees. And so if you were one of those that attended for the first time, we encourage you to come back and hope you had a good experience. I wanted to thank all those who participated, from vendors to district personnel and to the state agents that participated. One of the great things I thought about the conference was the state agency desks or tables that were in the lobby and their openness to engage districts and vendors on problems and solutions in the pursuit of building schools. Immediate next steps for the 45th conference. The 45th conference, I hope, is equally as good as last year's or better, is February 28th through the March 1st in Sacramento. And we are going to be having calls for strand co-chairs and committee members and calls for conference proposals in the next coming months. So stay tuned for more on that. And I think that concludes my thoughts on the conference.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for that quick update. And as a reminder, the 45th annual conference is coming right around the corner, February the 28th through March 1st. So be on the lookout for information. It'll be right back here in Sacramento. So I see Tom's camera finally came back on. So nice to see you, Tom.
User error.
User error. There you go. That's always one of my problems. So I did want to backtrack just a little bit, only because we do have some time. There was a question that Joanne brought up. It had to do with firms navigating through the changes related to NEM 3.0 and taking away their ability to survive the contracts. And I'll start, and if I state this wrong, please, one of the staff members maybe correct me, but NEM 3.0 will not impact contracts that are currently signed and under the NEM 2.0 interconnect agreement with the local utilities. It's not reverse or backward impact. These are only for projects that sign or receive interconnect agreements after April the 15th of this year. Actually, I'll strike that the applications are not submitted before April 15th of this year. So current contracts that you have in place, whether they're PPA contracts or other contracts, would still be valid during the term of that contract. So if I misstated that, any of our folks in our Energy Commission or Energy Coalition, please let me know.
Nope, that's the right answer, Alan. Yeah, the problem that I think it's Joanne points out is real, and it's an existing problem, but I don't think there's an interplay between that and NEM 3.0.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, we will just a quick reminder about our job exchange and People's Choice. This is encourage folks to take advantage of posting your upcoming RFP, RFQ opportunities, as well as job opportunities in your district or your firm. There's opportunities out there, so we encourage you to take a look at that as we all work together to find the best people in our industry. So make sure you log on to our CASH website, and there's an opportunity there to post your RFPs, RFQs, or your job postings there. So please take advantage of that opportunity. And so next slide, please. I think we've kind of reached the end. I know initially we were going to have OPSC, but I don't think they were able to make it. They had a meeting today, so I'm sure that they're busy with that meeting. But I wanted to thank everybody for being here today. And as a reminder, the next CASH day will be on April the 26th, 11 a.m. We'll be updating you on all of the current activities that are happening in our state as it relates to school facilities. So I want to thank everyone for being here today and encourage you to tune in on the 26th to hear more current and topical information. So with that, thank you all for being here, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.